So,
One
one of my favorite scenes in any movie. Yeah, yeah. There's one, it just gives me the creeps every single time I see it. What's that? I don't know why. Put that little screen. What's that? Oh, that you're talking to me. Okay. Did we get to this? Did we get to this?
We got to the May 4th anti-police violence rally.
Oh, so we got the Haymarket. Yeah.
Yeah, we got past.
What's that? Favorite NBA team? That's that one.
We got past.
They're horrible.
We got to the May 4th. What did you say?
My favorite NBA team is horrible.
Who is it? That's okay. What?
Huh? Which is because when I was a little kid, NBA teams were not on television, but when Utah Jazz off in Salt Lake City, we got a Salt Lake City station in Utah, Salt Lake station in Miles City. One of the weird things, so they have jazz games on TV, so in Utah. Because we didn't, it was almost impossible to get NBA games.
Rally.
So we got May 4th,
Yes.
we got craft. What is the biggest craft? What's the really big craft union? The AFL and the CIO. Which one is the union of the Federation of Craft or Trade Unions? Is it the Knights or the AFL? So which one were trade unions? And so what kind of unions are called for all workers?
That's industrial.
And which one wanted to change the system more, get rid of the wage system?
That's.
Yeah. Now, for their main ideas, 8-hour working day, better working conditions, regulation, they both basically agreed. But the Knights of Labor wanted that cooperative system. And, we got the boom bust cycle. We finished that yesterday. We'll be on the test. And remember, oversupply, eventually will drop demand. Something has to stimulate demand, that will lead to more supply. Who does well in a bust? Yeah, big. So it could be those with wealth or corporations that are big that survive the bust. They can scoop up their competitors. They get wealthier because of the deflation. Who came up with the boom bust cycle and said that reason because the rich get richer? Yeah, it was why the whole system was flawed. Capitalism was flawed. And what does the Federal Reserve do? To try to raise its interest rates. What are they doing now? They're probably going to lower again. No, we'll see. It's one of those things, if you pay attention to these things, the job numbers for January are coming out tomorrow. And that's going to be a big deal. They'll come on how many jobs are created. The economy was booming, but appear to be maybe in that little bit of a downslide now. A couple more shocks like we've had in the last week. Go. So those who focus on supply or demand, which one's conservative? Which one is conservative? Focus on the suppliers or demand? Yeah, supply. And what do we call, Franklin Roosevelt would call them this, those who focus on demand? So it's going to be technically supply side economics, it's laissez-faire economics, conservative economics. Demand side economics, that's liberal economics, but you see it mostly called Keynesian. I'll explain that when we get there. There's a guy named Keynes, economist named Keynes. So, did we get into this? Did we got the police attack?
Yes, we got to.
Are we right to here?
Yes.
We got anti-police violence. By the way, May 1st, and because what happened when the police waded in with their day sticks, all over Europe the next year, the socialist parties had a big rally to remember what happened in the United States on May 1st. So there's already a May Day celebration, and that became, in 2 years, they announced it as their International Labor Day. And workers didn't get a day off. So a Labor Day became a big deal in countries that would eventually fight for a Labor Day. That'd be a day off. And so most of the world, their Labor Day is May 1st. But the United States did not want to give labor unions a victory, so they made it in September. That's why it's not May 1st. But for example, after the Bolshevik Revolution, in what's going to become the Soviet Union, they would have their big parade announcing the greatness of socialism, even though it's really a totalitarian state, the greatness of socialism on May Day. Now Russia still has a big parade. It's kind of tradition. Even though they're nothing at all like Serbia. So back to this anti-police rally. Do we get to Haymarket Square? And a big square, and they're gonna families came out, it'd be like a picnic. Here's one of the things talking about this police violence. This happened right after it to organize the Haymarket Square. On a Sunday, they thought they would have it. It was in German because of all the immigrants. And well, police surrounded this. Soon it became kind of confrontational. Hey, you get a bunch of police with day sticks. Remember, those are the long clubs surrounding people. It's going to lead to tension immediately. You know, sometimes that kind of presence can trigger an uprising. Well, this is a little more prominent. Somebody rolled basically a round bomb, and I'll show you a picture of what one looked like. Rolled one with a wooden fuse into a group of about 15 to 20 police officers in England. It was certainly an anarchist. Certainly an anarchist murdered the police officer. You can imagine what's going to happen. What a great way to discredit the 8-hour working day, the strike, and labor unions. And so, 7 anarchists were blamed, known anarchists. And they even claimed they found bomb-making material in one of their homes. There's never been evidence that any of these people were involved. So these are the police officers, and here is remembering the anarchists, the 7 of them. They're going to be arrested, and this is a capital offense, murder, or they can be executed. Well, that wasn't enough. Who did they blame? Remember the labor unions. Which one were those who were more laissez-faire fear, anti-union? Did they fear the Knights more or the AFL more? Which one did they fear more? Which one was a greater threat to the system? The Knights, because they wanted to change it to a cooperative system. So they would use this news to say the Knights were involved, and they would discredit the Knights. And all of the United States, the media, which was newspapers, spread it. And most newspapers were owned by people who were anti-union. Even though this was the time of newspapers, New York City alone had 100 major daily newspapers. You know, people back then read more, they were much more informed, they paid much more attention. Politics was more important, they felt part of the system. I know it's interesting today. We have instantaneous communication. I could pull out this little computer in my pocket right here and find out all kinds of things. And the irony of this is, since we have this easy access, we're actually less informed than they were then. It's just kind of weird to think about, but it's very true. They read a lot more then. And by the way, I'm just reading about they're setting up a concentration camp on Guantanamo Bay. But kind of boggling my mind. But the stock market likes it. Moving on, money's being made. So the media spread the narrative, and all over the country, people were told that there were anarchists attack people that had no evidence of these 7 did it. And the Knights of Labor were involved. The Knights of Labor were not involved. The leadership of the Knights didn't even want the May 1st rally, yet they were blamed. And let's say you're sitting in Peoria, Illinois, or a little town called Helena, Montana, and you got this in the newspaper. What are you going to believe? Probably the Knights were involved. You know, people believe stuff. I know today people would never believe false information, but back then people did all the time. That's my way of lying to you. That was what we call false information. People believe it all the time now. Hasn't changed. Probably more today. And so what happened was they're going to be called bomb-throwing anarchists. And this would destroy the Knights. I didn't put this down for the Knights. The Knights died as a unit. Who knows what would have happened? It's one of those great what ifs. It had millions of members. 4 of these anarchists would be executed. Here is a mock-up of the bomb with the wooden fuse. And look at in the newspapers. Look how they draw. And remember that propaganda deed? It was certainly an anarchist. But what a foolish move. Because by doing that, the anarchists made sure that all the goals that person might have wanted didn't happen. Here's another one with a bomb. Didn't stop the assassination attempts. So this really began, or once again, help nativists. View nativists by saying radical immigrants are coming to the United States. I put that one picture up there. Just kind of remember that, keep it out. But this concept that many people from foreign lands were others. And I should add, I didn't type this down, add one more word to this. It was racial. The idea is what they're a different race, inferior. Remember what I told you, they were dividing Europe up into a bunch of different races, let alone areas around the world where they just decided we're going to divide people by color of skin. And so here is Uncle Sam, and look at him. Just please stop this crew of immigrants. And look at that, anarchists. Look how they draw them. And so they have Polish immigrants. There's a socialist, Italian. These are, and look at the faces, criminals. Make them look a little subhuman. Not so. Something with pictures of Irish, pictures of African Americans, and here it says who they are: the socialists in New York, anarchists in Chicago, and criminals, the mafia, organized crime from Italy in New Orleans. That's what they're allowing in. I'll come back to the New Orleans. So this would be used to discredit unions, but unions are a bunch of fools. Once again, that gets into what is a real American. And so keep everyone divided. So the workers are you an immigrant or not? They fight each other. And what happens? Monopolies. And so, what is that going to happen to? And eventually that bomb throwing anarchists will bleed right into the Red Scare after World War I. And so then it'll be fear of communists and Bolsheviks and the Red Scare. But now the Red Scare is a little bit different because they have somebody who's clearly a friend to all the people. Look at, they all love him, and they all seem to be very short. But now there is a state that says they're communists, the Soviet Union, the Union of Soviet Socialistic Republics, and they talk the same language, even though they're creating a monstrous totalitarian state, and so it fits. And I thought I'd put that in there, and they got a big army. So, also, I thought I'd just add this because I saw this. This is 2021, and this is during COVID, and they're talking about social distancing. So we all know you have to stand 6 feet apart, do not spread disease, which actually didn't work, but that is communism. But you notice she has 2 signs. You want to see the other sign? This person is really smart. And I know you're saying, well, don't make fun of her. I'm making fun. Defy fascists. Mortal enemies. But I trust anybody who decides her idea of patriotism is to make an American flag and wear it. So, everybody went nuts in COVID. I don't know if you noticed that. So there'd be a lot of anti-union activities. And these anti-union activities to intimidate and stop unions. The first one's called a lockout. And basically they just shut the company down and say, we'll take a short-term loss to break the union. And this is going to happen in every industry. Heck, it's going to happen. It's happened many times to like professional athletes and their unions. But it's just to break them so they give up their union or take less pay, take a worse deal. And so this, they'll call it a strike, but it's actually done by the company. Lockouts happen a lot. Got to be big enough to withstand lower production, but then break the union. Next, scabs. If there is a strike or when a lockout, bring in strike breaker. Replacement workers. They might not be as productive because they haven't had the job, but it keeps the factory going and also divides workers. You can imagine how strikers would hate strike breakers. Thus the name they gave them, scabs. So I can still remember about 20 years ago when Billings School District, the teachers went on strike. And they tried to bring in substitute teachers. And there was fights. Striking teachers were not going to let them in. And they were roughing them up. And so you have people doing the same thing, fighting each other, which only benefits one group. But I just remember that for teachers, that happens otherwhere. We'll get to maybe an attack on scabs. Next, yellow dog contracts. This is what unions call contracts. To say you won't join a union. They call them yellow dogs because the employers are cowards. Yellow dog is a coward. I don't know, it's tough. But this still happens today. It's technically illegal, but it's really hard to enforce. If you don't believe me, get a job at Amazon. Amazon is rabidly anti-union. So, blacklist. Blacklists are lists of workers who are troublemakers, AKA they want to start a union. So, for example, somebody wants to start a union in a steel mill, they will fire them, then spread their name, blacklist, to other steel mills so they won't fire them. Once again, this does happen again. So basically, it's like this secret list. If your name is on it, you won't get a job, won't get work, that kind of thing. You're blacklisted. Next, Pinkertons. We mentioned the Pinkertons back in the Civil War. The Pinkertons, when they were spies, these were private detectives, and they were going to spy on unions or be the guards to protect scabs or just to beat up people who were trying to start a union. So the Pinkertons would like act like a worker, go with workers, and then listen if they're trying to talk about union activity or strikes. The Molly Maguires, which you read about earlier, that's what broke them up. Was a Pinkerton, who was actually one of them, took money to betray his peers. And so Pinkertons would come in and just kind of follow the workers around, hang out places where workers might talk, where they feel free, talk, bathrooms. They just gotta hang out in bathrooms to listen to people. In the 20th century, that's what companies would do. They would bug bathrooms. They put microphones in bathrooms to listen to people that talk. Amazon has done that many times. I know there's not only the element of the privacy and also the pure creepiness of it. Yeah, I get it. But that shows you what they're willing to do to keep wages down. And the Pinkertons were just thugs. I got to be clear about it. Just thugs. It wasn't only Pinkertons. It was a lot of different private detective agencies. They were the most prominent. Company towns. So they would take over a town where you had to live in and pay their workers in scrip, which is company money. They wouldn't pay them in treasury bills, money at the time. They would pay them in scrip that says this is only good at the stores they own and to pay the rent. In fact, workers would be fired if they tried to buy something that was available at the company store. And what a great way to control workers. All you have to do is raise the prices at the store and raise the rent, and that's the equivalent of a pay cut. Just raise the prices. Force them, in fact, present it as a deal. You come work for Anaconda Copper Company in Anaconda. We'll give you a place to live. Thank you, a place to live. And now you're stuck. And if you don't want to live in that place, pay their rent, you're fired. Has anyone ever driven around Anaconda for fun? I mean, most of us have. Have you driven around Anaconda? There's all these little houses. I think they're get my directions right, on the east side. Little tiny houses. There's rows of them. Those are the old company houses. They're like 800, 700 square feet. I mean, they're tiny little houses. But that's what they have people live in. What a great way to control workers. Company towns. And then with the script, you can't go anyplace else. So if you hate your job and leave, your script is worthless anyplace else but the company store. How could you ever quit your job and go someplace else if you have no money to survive? You're stuck. And quitting is tough enough because you won't get paid for that time. Just imagine if you can't even save the money. And then propaganda. Tell workers that unions are anarchists. Here's one. This is in a newspaper. Uncle Sam telling labor, don't join the union. It's anarchist. Get their workers together and tell the workers, you start a union, it will cut your pay, you'll pay union dues, all this stuff. That's like mandatory if you get a job at Walmart. Technically, it's not supposed to be, but it all happens. I'm hoping the Hawk comes back. If the Hawk comes back, I'll let all of you know. See? You'll be excited. It's a red tail. M, let's get into an example of a lot of this in action. The Homestead Steel Company. Homestead was a steel, one of Carnegie's empire. And Henry Clay Frick basically ran the day-to-day business, day-to-day operations of his steel mills. So Frick, there's Henry Clay Frick. Carnegie had this reputation of being a philanthropist by then, and pro-worker, even though he paid them as low as he absolutely could. His workers at Homestead or all steel mills worked 6 days a week and had 2 holidays. As long as they didn't fall on a Sunday, no holidays. 2 holidays, Christmas Day and 4th of July. Other than that, every day they worked. There was no sick leave. There was no vacation. No, you worked or you didn't get paid. Well, Homestead had a steel union. It's called the Amalgamated Steelworkers Union. And what Carnegie decided to do is do a lockout and break the union. Lock him out, break the union. Then he left. He went to Scotland on a goodwill tour and talked about, I'm going to provide public university education to all Scottish children, and said all these things which he didn't do. Well, he could hide. And Frick did the work. What did Frick do? He had the company overproduce steel, so it had a little bit of a surplus. And then he hired Pinkertons. And Pinkertons, hundreds of them, well armed, not just with repeating rifles, pistols, but also a new weapon, brand new, called a Maxim gun. Has anyone ever heard of a Maxim gun? What is it? Yeah, the first real machine gun, Maxim gun. And heavily armed. These are all brand new weapons. Not just to protect, and they surrounded it with a fence. Here's the factory with a fence with barbed wire on top. Not just to protect the factory, but also to protect strikebreakers. And then the plan was to bring in scabs by boat. And they could sneak them in and run the factory. And the scabs, many of them were immigrants, get the nativist feeling to divide them. And many were recruited from the South. So they were also divided by race. So you have people who should be the same, but they use race. It's so insidious. That's what they did. Blacks and whites would not unify. Well, forming a shootout. And the Pinkertons were not going to let those scabs in. 17 people would be killed, 150 people would be wounded, and the scabs were kept out. Now, immediately, Frick went to the governor of Pennsylvania and said, send out the National Guard. He refused because public sympathy was with the strikers. As they saw it, much like in 1877, this could happen to me. They could squeeze me out and take away my wages. And so he did not send out the National Guard. And kind of pro-corporate newspapers really couldn't report the way they wanted to because of this public opinion. But then Frick was walking out of his factory 2 weeks into the standoff. Frick, I didn't write this down. There was an attempted assassination. And anarchists tried to kill Frick. Frick was able to fight him off. But what happened to sympathy? Switched, right? And turned into the strikers are now what? What kind of anarchist? Bomb throwing anarchist. And then that's when the state government sent in the National Guard and broke the union. What happened? The union took a big pay cut. All the leaders were blacklisted. By the way, was Carnegie still losing money, so he had to cut their pay? He had the highest profit he'd had on Carnegie Steel that year since the panic of 1873. Why did he do it? Good. He crushed them and squeezed money out. But he did feel bad. There was bad publicity about this. What happened? Breaking the union, even though Frick's assassination kind of tainted that. So Carnegie built the most elaborate opera house in all the United States in Pittsburgh for the workers. Dropped to their 14-hour shift. They could watch an opera. That's the gospel. Well, that's social Darwinism. We can't give them a pay increase, but I'll give them an opera house so their children can be culturally attuned and not fall in the same trap. By the way, Henry Clay Frick would become one of the richest robber barons too. His home in New York City is now a museum. Has some of the greatest works of art in all the United States. It's the Frick House, and it's right near Central Park. And if you ever get to New York City, go. It's kind of amazing, but it also shows you how he spent his money. He accumulated money, wealth, and then bought these great works of art and hoarded them. Fortunately, his family members would open that up to people to see. Of course, you have to pay. They still get money. But I think it's when I was here last time, 2019. Oh no, 2000. What's real later? 2022. It was I think $12. I mean, it's not cheap and it's not free, but it's not horrible. It's there's so many great things to see in New York City. They got McDonald's and everything, but that really is great. Oh, I know the bathroom situation in New York City is horrible.
Especially if I said hard.
It's just hard to find out.
Well, places just like won't let you use.
That's part of it, and part of it is it costs money.
Yeah, people just won't let you use.
Like even if you buy something, who needs a bathroom?
It's
Okay.
big cities are like that.
They were all.
It's like that in Helena, though, isn't it?
Some
In a way.
places
How many
downtown.
public bathrooms?
Like some downtown.
So this became known as a carnival of revenge, capital versus labor, and some of the most violent strikes in world history would happen there. And here, this is unionism. Unionism is Americanism. That's for the 1940s. Here, these are garment workers in sweatshops in New York City in 1911. People get to that. Because it's right before an event of a certain fire at a company called the Triangle Shirtwaist. We will get to that. We might adjust on that because I'm gonna be gone. We're gonna watch something on one of the days I'm gone about. Be a good thing to do when I'm gone. So the New Deal in the 1930s, there'll be a law called the Wagner Act. We'll get to it. So just in the New Deal, that would allow for unions to have to be recognized if a majority vote for it. But still, laws have been passed in the future that make the country pretty anti-union. But I must add this, 30s through the 70s was the height of unionism. The height of unions. In the 80s, union membership been dropping like a rock since. Every president since 1968, except for the most part, it's been anti-union, anti-labor. The closest president to have been pro-union in that era is probably, and he wasn't very pro-union. The most was Joe Biden. He wasn't really before, but when he became president, he kind of went away from he was much more economic. He was pretty conservative economic, very conservative. And he became a little bit less conservative as president. But that's another story. We're not there yet, obviously. But let me show you one thing that happened here. This is the share of union membership. And the union membership eventually went up to over 35% of our workers. Here is the pay, the share of the income going to the top 1% in the United States. And look what happened when union membership went up. More money went to everybody else. And guess what happened when union membership went down? Membership down, share of the wealth going to the top went up. There's reasons why companies don't like labor unions. We have maybe not, we're right up there with the most anti-labor president in history right now. Without a doubt. Without a doubt. The board, the National Labor Relations Board, where you take, about trying to get a union recognized and a union, if you have any questions about breaking the law about union membership, President Trump has made it worthless. There's 3 members and he fired one quasi illegally, and it's not going to replace it to the council. That's where we're at right now. Now you can say that's a good thing if you believe more conservative economics, or a bad thing if you believe more. So, Gilded Age politics. Speaking of that, let's get to this. So, Gilded Age politics. And I gotta be clear about this. This fits in very well with conservative economics right now. And, we'll see. We will see. So, I'll explain the Gilded Age just 1 second, but we can need a definition. And people misuse this all the time. And it irritates me to no end how badly they misuse it. The term is populace. Population Populism is this idea of political reforms for whatever ordinary people are. But a way to look at it is working class, working people. People who feel ignored, but not only ignored by the elite, but they also believe that government is rigged against them. This is populism. And so remember I told you how the right and left, that political spectrum, we kind of just introduced it a couple days ago. And people talk about left or right. Well, if you're more populist, you believe politics don't work that way. It works bottom top. The haves or the have-nots. That's the way they look at politics. People misuse this all the time. And one thing I should say, people who might have politics or a political position to benefit those on top will talk populist all the time. So remember William Henry Harrison in the Log Cabin Campaign? And he tried to act like Andrew Jackson in The Common Man, but his policies were not for them. He was acting what they would say populist, but he really wasn't. People misuse this all the time. It just irritates me to no end. Makes my ears bleed. So they wanted to reform capitalism. So they don't want to get rid of it, but they want to make it changes to capitalism that will not, as they feel, not rig the system against them. It's a crow. Darn it. Rig the system against it, or against them, or funnel money to the wealthy. So, Gilded Age politics. And one thing about this, you might see the numbers on the side. Virtually every eligible voter. We're talking nearly 80% for much of this era. Much more than today. In fact, the last election, voter turnout was down a lot, about 3%. About 3%. But politics was really drab and boring, but people were like really into their parties, like it was their team. And so it really wasn't so much what they stood for politically. It was, I'm a Republican or I'm a Democrat. And close elections, and I should put a comma there, lackluster policies. I mean, it really reminds me of today a lot. But except there's a lot more independence today. Power of the Congress was way up. This is not like today. Power of the president was down. I mean, talk about a bunch of nobodies as president. But whenever they rate the best presidents in American history, they don't put the presidents from 1878 to 1901 there. This was quite the motley crew of presidents. And a few more things I want to get done with this part here. Both Democrats and Republicans limited the federal government. Republicans are becoming more laissez-faire conservative. And Democrats, they were conservative, but also the South. Remember the Solid South. They didn't want federal government to stop Jim Crow laws. And there was political corruption at all levels, kind of personified by machines. Massive corruption. And the key issues? Civil service reform. So they're going to reform that spoils system of giving government jobs to supporters. We'll get to that, and that directly relates to today. So civil service reform. Basically what it was is people would get lucrative government jobs by collecting the tariff. You could skim money off the top for support. Also the tariff. Remember protectionists or free traders. High tariffs, low tariffs. What letting in competition or not. Once again, this is also very much an issue today. And lastly, the money question. What is the money question? Gold standard or greenbacks? Inflation or deflation? Pro speculation, pro small farmers. But in the middle of all this, the last thing you're going to write down for today was going on an agrarian revolt. An agrarian revolt. And you have farmers sitting in the middle who felt they had no political representation. Both parties seem to be ignoring the issue of farmers and working people. You want me to turn it back? Okay, I'll do it just 1 second, Chad. Want to go to this for the ballot. Tomorrow. We got an assassination, we got my uncle. We have farmers issues. Goodbye, everybody. My uncle is coming. Get ready for me. Body snatcher. Ready.
Need to break it in. I must be saying this.
Invasion. I'm gonna check the temperature. Do we have to start paying for this? It's 10 degrees.
No, you would say, oh, well, that.
It's not a 12 degrees in an hour.
Yeah, because of diversity, because that was being a minority, is because that's being tracked. That was his argument. I can choose.
But you got.
What?
You're sick.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
For what?
I'm sorry for you on Tuesday too. I'm really.
I mean, like, so I kept thinking of my exercise right now, like, two legs. I'm like this. And I was like, oh, great, now we need to learn about the transgender people in school. It was even that. It was like, and she was like, she's like, across the hallway, and over, and she was like, yes, yeah, go Trump. Yeah. And he's like, literally not talking to me. He's not one of the functions. It's like, we're fast.
How many times?
Yeah. What? You know, he's supposed to say dolphins, I know. Yeah. He's so I don't know how we don't. So now, don't tell like.
And real. Scared.
It was like challenge, like, I was like, like, girl, communities. And very listed advocated for. It was funny, it was like, I'm this.
My 13th reason. Yeah.
Miami is Condon interesting. No, which you're going to go as a CA just trading.
Are they trading names? It's been like 6 or 7.
Yeah, they actually trade.
So what do you think?
We already.
It's 3 guys.
Three cats or 3 pigs?
3 guys.
What they talking about?
You know what you can do today? I know what all of you want today. What do you want? A quiz. That's not happening. Nobody always thinks last year. That would have been the blue they were going to. Huh? Keep open. Keep open. Keep them alive. Keep them alive. Huh? I mean, exactly. That's good. That's cool. Huh? Wow. It was great. I met Bill Walker. Talked to him for like 10 minutes. He was at a coaching back when I was still coaching. On the last. And he gave a talk. Bill Walker. He was really nice. I mean, like, really nice. Take a picture of it. Then sit. Yeah, I want to sit. I like the one. His thing was, you know, like, you got. Half sheet of paper number 1, 2, wait for it. What number would you like? Let's go with 9. All right. Gotta check what the name was, because Harold Carmichael was a great receiver. Yeah, what was he, about 6'6", 6'7"? He was good. Harold Carmichael. I always liked the Eagles. That's why I liked him in second place. The Eagles, they can win. They're a good team. I can see it. Classic. All right. Oh, we're still filming this. Everyone say goodbye to your viewing audience. That with sincerity, I appreciate it. He's so weird.